Hey there, I'm Julie, and this is the Married to Addiction podcast. If you're here, then you're probably what I call my secret sister. We're in a situation we never asked to be in and fighting a battle we never wanted to fight. We're faith-filled women who are married to an alcoholic, and it affects every inch of our lives. If that sounds like you, then this is a safe place for you to land. Married to Addiction is a faith-based podcast where I help you find the tools and strength you need to navigate your husband's addiction without losing yourself in the process. So please subscribe and tune in as often as you can, because your husband's recovery is important, but so is yours. If you're the wife of an alcoholic and you struggle with triggers, overthinking, or emotional exhaustion, I have a free resource just for you. I created my Turning Point Toolkit for the moments when everything feels like it's going sideways. When a comment or a look or even a broken promise sends your nervous system into overdrive and you're just trying not to spiral. This free toolkit gives you simple, private tools to help your body settle, quiet overthinking, detach without guilt, and break out of the exhausting patterns that keep you stuck and resentful, all while staying rooted in your faith. It's not about fixing everything or having the perfect response. It's about calming your nervous system so you can take faithful, grounded action in the moment. You don't have to wait until things fall apart to get support. You can get instant access to the Turning Point Toolkit right now at turningpointtoolkit.com. Go grab yours today so you can finally have something to reach for when triggers hit. Hello, and welcome into episode 120 of the Married to Addiction podcast. Today's episode is called Managing the Mornings After, when he's hungover and you're angry. Sound familiar? Let's jump into this. So in the last episode, we talked about how to handle drinking in the evenings. And today we're going to talk about another time that I know many of you dread, which is, of course, the morning after. The morning after he's been drinking, which has left your chest feeling tight and your thoughts spinning wildly and your anger bubbling under the surface. If you have lived through this several times, which I'm guessing you probably have as a wife of an alcoholic, you are all too familiar with this pattern, right? So today we're going to walk through how to hold space for your emotions, protect your peace, and navigate the morning after without unnecessary conflict, which is a huge piece of this too. So this is a framework that you're actually going to be able to use even when you get up the next day and the space between you and your husband still feels super heavy. So first, I want to basically normalize what's happening. So this is a very typical thing that I experienced in my own life as a wife of an alcoholic, and that I also see a lot of women that I work with talking about. So after a night of drinking, your husband might do a few different things. He might be quiet, withdrawn, or avoiding you. He might apologize or deflect, try to change the subject, kind of, if anything is brought up. He might pretend that nothing happened at all, or he might wake up super defensive or even angry. On your side of things, it usually looks like your nervous system still being on high alert. You're noticing tightness in your chest or your shoulders. You're having racing thoughts, spinning thoughts about what happened. You are feeling frustration, anger, and the need to set him straight. That was me. Or you may just be feeling absolutely exhausted and hopeless. I definitely had mornings like that too. All of these things is normal. You are trying to process the stress from the night before. The thing that we want to get to is how we can respond to all of this in a way that keeps your peace intact or brings you peace if you are not feeling that naturally the morning after, which typically we don't, right? So the first thing that I want you to concentrate on the next time you have a morning after, before you speak or act, take a moment to ground yourself. Now, this can be hard, especially if you are feeling really ramped up. Like I said, that was kind of my MO. But I want you to understand that this isn't about ignoring your feelings about this, okay? This is about honoring your body and honoring your heart first, so you don't automatically respond from a place of just reacting. That is usually where additional chaos begins. Grounding yourself is huge in moments like these. If you haven't heard yet, I actually recently added a grounding room to the Secret Sister Circle. In fact, it's one of the very first stops for new members, because learning to ground yourself will serve you so well in situations like this, and just honestly in life in general. So that's your first step. Secondly, if you decide you need to have a conversation, and deciding you need to have a conversation is a whole process in and of itself, because a lot of times we feel like we need to have a conversation, but we are coming at it from a place of just reacting, or a place of just how we feel about something. We are not really considering whether or not a conversation needs to take place in this particular time frame. But if you do think this through in a well thought out way and decide you do actually need to have a conversation, it helps to have some simple, respectful conversation guidelines in place ahead of time. I so wish that I could have had a do-over for all of the times the morning after that I just yanked the Band-Aid off of the gaping wound that was still hanging in the air the next day because I was mad. I can tell you that 10 times out of 10, it helped nothing. In fact, it just made everything worse, typically. So I encourage you to create some healthy communication guidelines before you have a conversation, so that it can be as productive as possible. And again, you don't always need to have a conversation. So knowing when is a good time to do that and when is not a good time to do that is also super important. We also have a lesson on this in the Secret Sister Circle. It's a lesson called communication, specifically for talking with your husband in situations like these, because there's way more that goes into it, or that should go into it, than we usually put into practice. There's also a lesson in there called how to be heard by your husband, to ensure that whatever communication you actually do have can have the potential to lead somewhere good, instead of just continuing or amplifying the chaos that is already going on in your house. Of course, if you go to secretsisterscircle.com, you can sign up if you feel like you need some additional guidance around those types of things. But really, knowing when to have a conversation and knowing how to have a conversation is really huge at times like these, especially the morning after. Lastly, another thing we want to do is avoid the trap of rescuing or fixing. So remember that you are not responsible for your husband's recovery. And sometimes another way that the morning after can play out is feeling the need to kind of smooth things over, or help him fix his hangover with some coffee, or offer like endless reassurance, things like that. And while this may feel loving in the moment, you do need to proceed with caution here, because doing this can actually backfire in the long run. Because what is actually happening when you do this with regularity is it's reinforcing the cycle of enabling. It's also keeping your nervous system on alert, right? Because you're like trying to read the room, trying to read him, trying to figure out what does he need, what will help. And all of that kind of tells your body and your mind and your system that your piece is optional. So we want to make sure that he feels better, right? But our piece is optional, because we're still upset when we do these things, clearly. So instead, what's usually better is to let him sit in the consequences of his choices, even if they're small ones, headache, not feeling good, whatever. And understand that you can still be kind and compassionate and even loving without carrying the weight of fixing him. So sometimes we feel like there's two extremes, right? We're either being super nice and loving, or we're telling him about himself. Neither one of those things are where you really want to land. You want to land on getting comfortable with letting him sit in the consequences of his choices without reiterating to him what those are, because you're mad, right? And still being kind and compassionate towards your husband. This is kind of an art form. This is kind of a balance that we have to learn, and it comes from practicing some of the things that we've talked about here today. It is important to remember ultimately that your role is to protect your heart not to manage his behavior or his drinking or his sobriety. This is also where faith comes in. In these moments, it is so important to trust that God sees what's happening and that He is working behind the scenes, even if you don't see that outwardly. So the next time you face a morning after, I want you to remember to pause first and try to ground yourself before you do anything else. Have healthy communication guidelines in place if you feel the need to have a conversation. And again, you even want to have some good discernment on whether or not a conversation is necessary in all of these instances. I want you to release the need to fix or rescue him. And most importantly, I want you to protect your nervous system and your peace. When you start regularly handling morning afters like this, it does become easier to hold space for your feelings without getting pulled into the chaos. Your peace matters. Your emotions matter, even in the hard mornings, even the morning after. And God is always there, walking with you, even if you don't feel it in the moment. So until next time, remember to protect your heart, guard your peace, and trust that you are deeply loved. Thanks for listening. Quick question for you before I let you go today. Have you been to the Married to Addiction website? If you haven't, I would love if you would go pay it a visit. It's just marriedtoaddiction.com. And over there, you can see just a lot of different information about my podcast. There is a blog on there. There's some free resources for you. And there's also a few ways that you can actually get some help if you need a little more help and direction and support as you travel this difficult path with your addicted husband. So if you haven't yet, please go visit marriedtoaddiction.com. Thanks so much.